Meltdown in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, what the Oh,
well
I
done.
called the race with frickin' King 8.
In poker, pocket aces are supposed to be a blessing, but for Phil Hellmuth, they've started to feel more like a curse. Every time he looks down and sees those two bullets, it's the same story on repeat. Early confidence, a nightmare turn card, and a meltdown the internet won't let him forget.
The river is a tray. Jenkins can hardly believe he'll take the main pot. Shung the side pot. Hellmuth is gone.
10-jack offsuit called and 8-9 called. And they both beat me. It was unbelievable.
Which raises the real question. How does one of the greatest players alive keep losing with the greatest hand in the game? But to really understand that, we need to rewind to how it all started. Born July 16th, 1964, in Madison, Wisconsin, Phil Hellmuth grew up in this weird but cool mix of strict academics and artistic freedom. His dad, Phil Sr., was a university dean, very serious, very structured. His mom, Lynn, was a sculptor with a creative spirit, so right away, little Phil is balancing books and bronze, rules and imagination. And as you guys probably know, he even crossed paths with future greatness early on. At Blessed Sacrament Elementary, he became close friends with none other than Chris Farley. Yes, the Chris Farley, who would later blow up on Saturday Night Live. But once Phil hit high school, things took a sharp turn. He wasn't fitting in, wasn't making friends easily, and definitely wasn't impressing anyone academically or athletically. He struggled with attention deficit issues, and his low grades brought constant tension with his father. Meanwhile, his younger siblings seemed to be excelling at everything. So Phil called himself the ugly duckling of the family. On top of that, school wasn't kind to him. He got bullied, and his confidence took hit after hit. The one bright spot was his mom. She gave him a piece of wisdom that would stick with him forever. She taped a message to the bathroom mirror that read, "You are what you think. You become what you think. What you think becomes reality." Phil later said that seeing that every single day genuinely changed his life. It made him believe that he had control over his own destiny, even if nobody else believed it yet. So Phil pushed forward. He eventually enrolled at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, wanting badly to study business. But his grades weren't good enough, so he landed in philosophy instead. And honestly, the major wasn't what held his attention. The poker games were. This is where his story really starts heating up. Picture Phil, a college student who's not clicking with traditional school life, but suddenly discovering his true talent in these small stakes campus poker games. $5 buy-ins, 10-cent antes, nothing glamorous, but he absolutely dominated. He became obsessed with how players perceived him, learning how to manipulate his table image. And that obsession? It basically became his superpower. He had plans for business school, but poker called louder. And in the early 80s, choosing poker as a career sounded insane. But he didn't care. He dropped out after 3 years because he was already making real money grinding local games. The path to Vegas wasn't smooth. He traveled there 10 times before he finally started winning consistently. Every time he went broke, he'd head back to Madison and literally work in the fields, detasseling corn, tilling soil, just to rebuild his bankroll. The grind was real. Then, early 20s and full of ambition, he made the leap. He moved to Vegas to become a full-time poker player. And like almost everyone who chases that dream, he crashed hard multiple times. But he kept coming back. And eventually, he figured out the formula. The kid from Wisconsin cracked the code. By 1988, 23-year-old Phil walked into the World Series of Poker for the first time. He didn't win, but he made a name for himself. He even entered the main event and finished 33rd. And the man who knocked him out? The reigning champ, Johnny Chan. Fast forward to the next year, Chan comes back trying to win an impossible third world title in a row. And who ends up facing him heads up? That same kid from Madison he busted the year before? Except this time, the ending flipped. Phil raised, Chan re-raised with ace-7. Phil fired back with a huge re-raise. And suddenly, the young challenger had the legend all in. The flop came king, 10, king, giving Phil 2 pair. Chan whiffed the turn and the river, and that was it.
And there it is. Hellmuth wins the championship. He has the knowledge that he beat one of the all-time greats, Johnny Chan.
At just 24 years old, Phil Hellmuth became the youngest world champion in poker history, a record that held for nearly 2 decades. He didn't just win, he stopped a dynasty. And overnight, he became the bright new face of poker. His timing couldn't have been better. Poker was evolving from smoky backrooms into a sleek, televised mind sport. Hellmuth became one of the game's first modern stars. Through the 90s, he kept winning and building his brand, but everything exploded in the mid-2000s when poker hit TV in a massive way. ESPN, Poker After Dark, high-stakes poker, you name it, and Phil was on it. After Chris Moneymaker's 2003 main event win sparked the poker boom, a new wave of young, hyper-skilled online players showed up. Hoodies, headphones, mathematical strategies, these guys were machines. A lot of the old-school pros couldn't keep up, but not Phil. He kept calling himself the best, even while the new generation roasted his play. And you guys probably remember the legendary, "I can dodge bullets, baby."
I can dodge bullets, baby. You don't think I knew he had a full house?
Moment after he folded ace-king on an ace-high board. His explanation for his style was something he called white magic, his uncanny ability to read opponents so well that he could make insane folds.
Am I Phil Hellmuth? Is that ace king?
Ah, man.
Is that ace king?
Phil folds.
And ridiculous hero calls.
Call.
This is why you're Phil Hellmuth.
That ability and his tight, aggressive style kept him competing against the new generation even when others faded out. But of course, the other thing that kept him on TV, the meltdowns.
Buddy, you're an idiot, is what you are.
That's 3 times.
Phil Hellmuth hates losing, hates it. Bad beats, questionable plays, unlucky rivers. He'd explode. He complained. He scolded players. He lectured tables about how they should play. His famous line summed his whole mindset. If there weren't luck involved, I would win every time. And sure, some of the theatrics were dialed up for the whole poker brat persona, but a lot of it was just Phil being Phil. And if there's any era that captures him at his absolute wildest, it's the mid-2000s and beyond, when televised poker basically turned him into a non-stop highlight reel of drama, blow-ups, and instant memes. Let's start in 2005, a year burned into poker history, thanks to one of Phil's most iconic meltdowns. He got cracked when his ace-king lost to king-jack, and instead of taking the hit quietly like most players, Phil detonated. He launched into a rant that instantly became part of poker folklore, calling his opponents the worst players in the world.
These are some of the worst players in the entire world over here.
And blasting one guy for being unable to spell poker.
Idiot players call races with queen 10. They don't even know how to spell poker.
Classic brat energy. Now that moment was big, but nothing compares to the 3-hand disaster he suffered against Tom Dwan in 2008. That matchup at the NBC Heads Up Championship is still replayed today. Phil picked up pocket aces, literally the dream hand. Dwan had pocket 10s. Phil slow-played, re-raised, and finally snap-called. Dwan's all in with the confidence of a man already counting his chips. He was 92% to win after the flop. Then came the turn. Dwan hit his miracle 10, and suddenly, Phil's entire soul left his body. What followed was volcanic. He lectured Dwan like a disappointed father, insisting he would never put that much money in with 10s. He called Dwan a sucker. He called him terrible. He essentially gave a sermon on how the poker brat got robbed.
Son, you're the sucker. You just put in 20,000 with 2 10s.
And poker fans ate up every second. But the blow-up that really made headlines came later that same year at the 2008 WSOP. Christian Dragomir made a gutsy call, pre-flop, with 10-4 suited, and that alone sent Phil into a slow boil. The flop came, Dragomir fired, and Phil, holding ace-king, folded face up. Then Dragomir flipped over the bluff. The entire room erupted, and Hellmuth completely lost it. He started pacing, yelling that Dragomir was the worst player in history and had no business calling him.
Worst player around. I won't call you.
Fans were loving the spectacle. The TD had to step in, and Dragomir finally stood up, shouting back until the level ended and everyone was forced to take a break, probably for everyone's safety. Then came 2023 when Phil hopped onto Hustler Casino Live and played, well, horrifically. He bought in way too short, a move fans had been roasting for years, and immediately got stacked twice. First, Nick Airball picked him off with pocket queens versus Hellmuth's ace-9 of clubs. Phil shoved into a monster and lost both runouts. Then Jungleman trapped him perfectly with top pair against Phil's pocket jacks. Again, run it twice, lose both. Phil cut the session short and admitted afterward that it was about as bad as he could play. Even he couldn't sugarcoat that one. By 2024, the grind was still real. Hellmuth made a deep run at WSOP Paradise in the 10,000 GG Million Championship, hoping to finally grab bracelet number 18. He bluffed the river into John Valinas, who tank-called with ace-high after Phil tried to talk him into folding. Valinas was right, Phil was wrong, and that was the end of his run. He walked away stunned, wondering what just happened. And then came 2025, high-stakes poker, poker go, pure poker brat theater. After taking two horrible coolers, Phil got it in with pocket queens against Seth Gottlieb, who woke up with aces. The board ran out in brutal fashion. Seth made a flush, and Phil was completely felted. He stood up, tossed his cards toward the dealer, and muttered, "I quit." That was fun.
I quit.
Big star for Gottlieb.
Was that I quit?
No.
That was fun.
With the kind of sarcasm only Phil can deliver. Through every meltdown, misread, and rant, Phil insists he's bringing attention to poker. He once said his sponsors loved the drama, even the moments that made him look unhinged. But he also admits he sometimes hates the version of himself he sees on TV. But honestly, that's exactly what makes the poker brat unforgettable.